barriers to accessing administrative appeal processes, including establishing a minimum notice requirement and limiting fees charged to initiate an appeal.
Welcome, Auditor Caballero and Ombudsman Salinger. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I am City Auditor Mary Hall Caballero, and with me today is Ombudsman Margie Salinger. And we are... I appreciate that.
Just for you.
We are here...
Once was enough.
Yes, that was enough. We are here to continue a discussion that we started on April the 22nd, when we introduced a proposal that was intended to address barriers that keep people from accessing their administrative appeal rights. And our proposal would essentially do two things. It would require bureaus to notify people when they have a right of appeal, and it also would limit the fees to access the hearings office when that's where their appeal would be routed. At that meeting, you may recall that some concerns were raised by Commissioner Fish and Commissioner Fritz, and Commissioner Fritz asked that we consider how our proposal would affect demolition cases, and Commissioner Fish asked that we include some protections against frivolous appeals if a party wanted to use that as a delaying tactic in an enforcement case. And in the intervening weeks, we have worked with staffs for both commissioners to come up with some responses to those concerns, and we have resubmitted our proposal. And at this point, we are prepared with a presentation if you would like us to walk through the details of those changes, or if you'd like to go straight to your discussion, we are here to answer any questions you have.
I'd like you to walk me through them, please.
Yeah, I would too. I'd like to see that, please.
Dan, are you testifying?
Good afternoon. I'm Margie Salinger, Ombudsman for the City of Portland. And I, again, have a very rudimentary PowerPoint for you to look at. But as the auditor said, these are just some revisions to the ordinance we presented last time, with the two main components being minimum notice requirement and also a nominal filing fee for hearings office appeals. So in last month's discussion, Commissioner Fish suggested adding to the proposed minimum notice under Title III a requirement that the notice also contains citations to code authority for the underlying administrative act and also to the appeal right. We did that, and you'll see those changes reflected in section 3.130.020, paragraph B, which describes the content requirements for minimum notice. In last month's discussion, Council also raised a couple of policy questions pertaining to Title 22, which governs appeals to the hearings office. Commissioner Fritz raised a concern about how and whether to reconcile the Title 24 delay requests, which go through the hearings office, with the proposed nominal filing fee for the hearings office appeals. So based on discussions with the Commissioner's office, the proposed revisions before you exclude demolition delay requests from the proposed appeal fee provision on the basis that demolition delay requests are qualitatively different from an appeal of a city decision, and therefore Title 24's provisions regarding filing fees should govern. The other revision...
Excuse me, I'm not sure that I have the amended exhibit.
So there should be a memo at the start of your package that highlights the changes. The amendments are part of the resubmitted exhibits as well. Do you have that memo before you?
I'm not seeing it. And I certainly don't have the revised code language.
Would you like my copy?
Thank you very much. I apologize.
So under Title 22, if you look at 2210.030, that section's titled Initiation of Appeal. Then there's paragraph D. There's just
Got it. Thank you very much.
short phrase exempting demolition delays. So So the other revisions to Title 22 are in response to Commissioner Fisher's suggestion that the hearings officer have sanction authority to penalize parties that bring frivolous appeals, including authority to award statutory interest. Using the court's rules of civil procedure as a model, we drafted proposed language under Title 22 that says that by filing and pursuing an appeal, the appellant is certifying that the appeal is not frivolous. And if it turns out an appeal is frivolous, the hearings officer has discretion in imposing a sanction, which could include reimbursing the Bureau for costs and expenses, civil penalties up to $10,000, and the state statutory interest rate of 9%. You'll note that statutory interest appears twice in the revised language under 2210.050C and then in D. And that's because we've distinguished between pre- and post-judgment interest. Pre-judgment interest is a rate of interest applied to a money judgment between the date the money is first owed and the date of the hearings officer's judgment on appeal. This kind of interest is sometimes referred to as delay damages or damages for the cost of delay, and is reserved for frivolous appeals. Prejudgment interest would be awarded at the discretion of the hearings officer under the proposed sanction authority. In contrast, post-judgment interest is a rate of interest applied to a money judgment between the date of the hearings officer's judgment until the city actually receives payment. The imposition of this type of interest is more typically mandatory, having nothing to do with whether or not an appeal is frivolous. We've proposed that the hearings officer award post-judgment interest where the city prevails on an appeal regarding the recovery of money or civil penalties. But the rate of interest to use is also a policy question. For the purposes of discussion, we selected the state statutory interest rate of 9%, not compounded, which falls in the middle compared to other state statutory rates, and is the interest rate that small claims court uses, which seemed like an analogous scenario to this context. There's also the option of tying the interest rate to something else, like the U.S. prime rate, which at this point is 3.25%, the prime rate plus a percentage, or going another route entirely and tying the rate assessed to inflation using the consumer price index, just as an example. So that's all I have.
Okay.
So one point of clarification, thank you for that excellent presentation. It's something we talked about when you briefed me on this, is that even assuming the hearing officer awards interest, nothing prevents any bureau from resolving a dispute with a customer, with or without interest. And we're not compelled to collect the interest. It becomes a tool that can be awarded, but it doesn't change the normal equation on hardship cases, on granting people extended periods of time, payment schedules, and other relief. So bureaus will still have that option, and it's not mandatory, but it does reflect the fact that, you know, failure to make a payment that is lawfully due at some point means someone else is backfilling you, and interest is the way our legal system captures that time and money issue. But it doesn't prevent, say, the Water Bureau from, on any individual case, deciding to compromise with a customer, put in place a payment schedule, and offer other relief as they would do in the ordinary course. So I appreciated that clarification.
Other questions?
I was just curious why you don't use the word frivolous in the code. I mean, it seems you kind of have to
Right.
know it to recognize it. And a lot of
Well-
people aren't going to know it unless they recognize. I think everybody knows the word frivolous better than they do just reading 5 sections of code. And
You're right, that's a good point. I ended up just following the Rule 11 or Rule 17 in the court's Rules of Civil Procedure, and even though everyone knows those are the frivolous cases, you're right, they're not specifically defined. So I opted just to model the provision after those rules, but an earlier version had it in there, so there's no particular reason why not. But I think arguably what's specified in the provision translate into what are frivolous claims.
Maybe I'm confused, but doesn't the word non-frivolous appear?
It does.
does it?
Which includes frivolous.
It does, non-frivolous does appear.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh, okay.
A non-frivolous argument for extending, modifying, or reversing, yeah.
My guess is that the hearing officer, who is very experienced in these matters, might even apply the standard in a flexible way, distinguishing between someone who is a individual with a claim who may or may not understand the legal system, and a more sophisticated party that has a big debt to the city that may be using the system purely for delay and obstruction. And I'm seeing nods.
Yes. And we've also put in there that it's based on the specific person's knowledge, information, and belief.
Okay, other questions? Auditor, Ombudsman. Great, well, thank you both. Is anyone here to speak on this item? Doesn't look like it.
No one signed up.
Okay, so therefore it passes to second reading. So thank you very
Do
much.
we need a
Isn't it a-
motion to accept the proposed amendments?
So moved?
Oh, we have the amendments. I'm sorry. Yes, thank
I'll
you.
move it.
Second?
Okay, further discussion on adopting the amendments? Roll call on the amendments then, please.
Fish.
Thank you to the auditor and the ombudsman, or ombudsperson, and staff, the excellent work following up on the last hearing, discussions with council, working out language, talking us through it. Actually, I consider it a model of collaboration, and we're grateful for your work on this tonight.
Salzman.
Well, I also want to just thank the auditor and the ombudsman and our hearings officer for all the work, tireless work that he does. But as I told our auditor when we met shortly after the first reading, I had no clue about how things operated in this whole realm of city government and how disparate things are, depending by which bureau you make an appeal, or even what kind of appeals are available. So just really thank you for shedding some light and bringing to the attention of us how daunting mounting an appeal can be, and for helping to level the field and reduce the fees. And I'm pleased that we're going to be able to help support this too in the budgetary sense as well. But this is good, common sense, fair changes for good government. So thank you. Aye.
Novik.
I second every word that Commissioner Saltzman just said. Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you very much for your leadership on this. It's a significant project for the new auditor, who's not so new anymore now, which is great. And it's certainly ongoing great work by our ombudsman. It's a model of public process, also the work session and then the first reading, and then taking some time to work with each of our offices. Nancy Thorrington in the Bureau of Development Services and I are very grateful for the consideration to our carefully crafted demolition solutions. So I very much appreciate not only what you're doing, but how you're doing it. Aye.
Hales.
Yes, thank you. Nice work. Good administrative reform. People will be able to use the system now, and it'll make more sense. So thank you. Aye.
I just want to make one note for the record, Mayor, before you gavel us home. This matter was listed as, I think, 1 hour on our calendar. And I believe
Beat it by
by the
45
time
minutes.
actually started the hearing, I believe we did it in about 10 minutes, which is a refreshing change on the normal pattern around here, which is something is listed as 15 minutes, and an hour and a half later, we're taking a compassion break. So thank you for your also the sunshine and the truth in whatever around. Wow, you built in a little padding. We appreciate that, and versus the other. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, this passes the second reading next week. And now we just have one remaining item, which is to take a second reading roll call vote on item 513.
513, amend timeline and case file review for Independent Police Review Citizen Review Committee appeals.
Unless there's any further comments that maybe didn't get heard last time.
I think you could hear it on the replay. If you couldn't hear it in the meeting, I think
Yep.
it came across.
And there are no amendments, I assume.
No.
Okay, so let's take a roll call vote, please.
Fish.
thank you very much. Aye.
Saltzman.
Yeah, thanks for your good work. Aye.
Novik.
Thank you. Aye.
Fritz.
So, Mr. Severe and Auditor Caballero, I formally apologize for what happened last week. That was uncomfortable for all of us, and you soldiered on masterfully. I was told by my staff that everything you said was audible to the folks watching at home, which is the important part, I think. The other part that was important to me is that you had taken the time to brief me ahead of time. So had that not happened, I would not have been able to continue the hearing last week. Obviously, we need to have some discussions about how to maintain decorum in the building. It was also significant to me that the folks behind you yelling while you were giving your presentation are sometimes the folks who are so upset with us about police accountability. And it was very distressing that there was not more respect for the work that you do. And so I apologize for that on behalf of, I think, our entire community. And I thank you for persevering not only against voices who are actually arguing about something else, but also the voices and the concerns of the community who we all agree we're not doing enough fast enough, because we all want to get to a better place with police accountability. So thank you very much for all the work you do, especially for the way you handled last week. Aye.
Ed Hales.
I think a lot of us need to occasionally remind ourselves that there's a lot of affirmation for the work that you do and that all of us do, that we don't necessarily have to find it in these chambers, because the folks who come here are a small subset of the 600,000 people we serve. And I occasionally get to be out in the field with Constantine and others from your team, and the respect that everyone in the process has for the work that you do is evident even out in a difficult situation like we were out on together on Sunday. So I think whether it's the police bureau or the community, I think a lot of people that maybe aren't loud by nature or by habit are nevertheless grateful for the good work. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're recessed until tomorrow at 2 p.m.
6 o'clock tonight?
6 o'clock
Oh, it's
tonight.
for
Well,
the
that's the
budget.
budget
Yeah,
committee.
I got it,
So
sorry.
we're the 6:30 for the budget committee and 2 p.m. tomorrow for the council.
It's 6:30.